Steam rose from the meat, curling between the blue plates laid out across the laminated tabletop. The dining room was thin-lipped with hush, the beat of summer rain audible through the open window. My father sat at the head, back ramrod straight, a faint glimmer of sweat on his brow from the day's heat. My brother, Oliver, ladled gravy onto his potatoes, his expression passive, as though he'd already decided to keep quiet no matter what I said. I set down my knife and fork. The disappointment in my mother's eyes gathered, ready for another round. I could feel her waiting. My stomach was tight, dry. I looked up from my food and cleared my throat, the scrape of the chair legs underscoring what was coming. "I've decided," I said, "that I'm not registering for BCom. I'm not going to UJ. I'm going to write, full-time." No one moved. My father blinked once. Then, "You'll do what?" "I want to be a novelist. I've already started." I pushed the words out, but as I watched them meet the unblinking stares around the table, they sounded thin. Oliver snorted, rolling his eyes toward the light bulb dangling from the ceiling. "A novelist, hey? Going to be the next J.K. Rowling now?" I forced myself to keep my eyes on my father. The silence thickened, balled up between us all. I clutched my napkin so hard it threatened to tear. "I'm serious," I said quietly. My mother's fork clinked down onto her plate. "But, darling, do you know how difficult?" "I do, I know. But it's what I want." My father's fist rested against the table with a soft thud. "The world doesn't pay dreamers," he said. "You want to end up at my age doing other people's taxes in a cubicle? Or worse? You know what things are like in South Africa now. No one is waiting for a boy with stories." His words trembled at the end. I glanced at my cousin across the table. Kayla's mouth was twisted around something she hadn't swallowed. "I hear there's a Nobel Prize for short stories now," she muttered, looking away. Oliver chuckled. "You all think it's a joke," I said, hearing the flatness in my own voice. I wasn't surprised. The ridicule was familiar, expected. But this time, the muscle of resolve in my chest held strong. "I'm still going to do it. Even if I have to work on the side wait tables, whatever. I'm writing a novel. That's it." No one answered. I watched the hush settle, saw my dream fold like a question mark in front of the family. My father stood, picked up his plate, and left the room. The dinner cooled in front of me. Later that night, I heard him on the phone, muttering to my uncle about wasting a good brain and throwing away chances. I sat up in bed, window open, listening to the rain. The next weeks were a slog. I started waking before dawn to write, but each morning, as soon as light seeped into the living room, I'd sense the heaviness from my parents' bedroom. The dread of their disappointment became a kind of soundtrack, murmurs behind closed doors, Oliver's smirking, my mother's soft sighs. Every time I went into the kitchen, she tried to steer the conversation toward fallbacks, teaching, copywriting, anything stable. My father withdrew into silence. Each dinner waited by the gap between us. Friends from school messaged less and less, unsure what to make of me. I picked up shifts at a tiny bakery in Melville, scraping together enough to keep data on my phone and pay my third of the electricity. The rest of my days I spent in the public library or perched at the kitchen table, hunched over a battered laptop, tapping out scenes and deleting them, my nerves twanging with every footstep in the corridor. Some afternoons, I'd walk down Jan Smuts Avenue, threading through traffic just to clear my head. I ached for proof to conjure something that would make them see me, listen instead of judge. The city never offered silence. Minibus taxis blared, engines backfired, the smell of sharp exhaust wound into fried street food. but every time I came home, some tiny bit of certainty had chipped away. 6 months passed. The rejections came, each one a cold cut. Literary agents. Not the right fit, thanks. Magazines. Unfortunately, we will not be moving forward. I kept going because stopping meant letting their voices become my own. My mother showed me job ads folded from the Star newspaper. Even a part-time position. Think about it. I shook my head, and she left them on the counter until I threw them away. One rainy Friday, Oliver found one of my manuscripts printed out in the lounge. He picked it up, scanning, his lips moving. So what is this, then? About a taxi driver who wants to be president? His laugh was bright and mean. You actually finished this? Have you read it? He stopped short, squinting. I'll tell you what happens. You send this out, 2 weeks later, you're right back at the bakery. Except they don't even want you at the register. He tossed the sheaf of pages onto the sofa. Those words burned. I threw myself into edits, pushing harder. But the more I wrote, the harder it was to believe. Was I kidding myself? Every day I passed strangers on the pavement. Kids hawking sweets, men in torn vests, old women collecting plastic bottles. How could I think stories meant anything? What did my little dreams matter here in a city with such sharp teeth? A year slid by. My parents quietly gave up making suggestions. It hurt more somehow to be ignored than mocked. My resolve seemed as fragile as glass. The breakthrough came one morning in the quietest, most unremarkable way. An email. Dear Sizway, we are excited to offer you a book contract. I blinked at the screen, heart pounding so hard I could barely read. I read it again and again. The publisher was small, South African, independent. It would be a modest print run, but it was real. The trembling in my hands would not stop. I tried to show my parents that night, my hands shaking, but my father only nodded once, not sure what to say. So you'll get paid? He asked softly. Not much. But yes, I said. The process ground forward at the speed of bureaucracy. There were edits, rewrites, emails flying back and forth. Some days I felt elated. Most days, the pressure threatened to choke me. Launch dates shifted. Copies got delayed. Months went by, a blur of anxiety and sleeplessness. But then, one October afternoon, a white van pulled up outside our flat. A man unloaded 4 boxes and wheeled them to the door. My name was spelled across them, bold black. My mother watched, silent. I cut through the tape, lifted a book from the stack, cradling it in my palms. The cover was simple, the title embossed, my name crisp beneath. I took the copy, and for a minute I could not breathe nor speak. My mother rested her hand on my back, a gesture so gentle it almost undid me. The official launch happened at a tiny bookstore in Parkview. I invited the family. On the night, wearing my only iron shirt. I stood in a cramped room lined with shelves. My father did not attend. He had work, a late audit to finish. But my mother came, and Oliver, who looked bored but agreed to take photos on his phone. The launch was small. I signed copies for a few friends, for teachers who remembered me as shy and sullen. But I was a novelist, and it was there in black and white. In the days after, doubts crept in again. The book sold okay, but there was no sudden windfall. I got a decent review in a local magazine. Mostly, the city rolled on, indifferent and loud. At home, life didn't change. My parents smiled a little, but the air was still thick with everything unspoken. Their hopes wound tight around other kinds of success. I wrote a second novel, this time with more confidence. I drew from what I had seen, uneasy dinners, city buses, small triumphs. Each word pushed me further out of the shadow I'd grown into. 2 years later, everything tipped. My second book caught the interest of a major UK publisher. They wanted to do an international edition, an author tour. The advance was more money than I'd seen in all my years. I signed, numbed, and wired. Press interviews followed. There was a profile in the Sunday Times, a photo taken outside Constitution Hill, me holding a copy of the new book. Emails poured in. I hardly remembered sleeping. One Friday, my mother called, her voice pinched. "Mr. Rajan from next door just showed me an article about you. There's a photo." "Is that yours?" I laughed, genuine, surprised by happiness. "Yes, Ma, that's me." Some months later, I was invited to speak at a literary festival in Cape Town. The organizers wanted me to launch the paperback there. I phoned home. My father came to the line, his voice steady, a touch uncertain. "Will you be in Johannesburg again? When is your next event here?" he asked. "There's one planned, yes." I hesitated. "A talk at Wits. I could get you tickets." "We'll come," he said quietly. All of us. Something moved inside me, sharply but sweet. The day of the Wits event arrived hot and cloudless. The hall was fuller than I'd imagined. There were students, professors, journalists. I saw my family slide in at the back. My father crisp in his iron shirt, my mother with her bag clutched to her chest, Oliver in his work clothes. Their presence sharpened the air. I read an excerpt. I answered questions. Afterwards, a line of readers approached with books for signing. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed my father lingering, not coming forward, hands jammed deep in his pockets. He was quiet through the crowd. When at last the hall began to empty, my mother led them forward. She did not speak at first, just pressed my arm. My father reached out, awkward, sudden, and pressed my book into my hands. "Sign this one," he said, voice softer than I'd ever heard. I wrote, "For my family, thank you for teaching me what matters. Always, Sizwe." He read the words with care. He looked at me a long time, eyes clouded. "I read every page," he said at last. "It's about this place, this life. I see that now." There was a flicker of pride, a broken, mending pride, and for the first time in years, the silence between us shrank. We went home together in the family car. Driving through Haybrow, the city lights smeared gold and orange above the street. My mother opened my book in her lap, fingers running over my name. Oliver tapped the cover, grinning. "You actually did it, sissy," he said. "Didn't think you had it in you." "I did," I said simply. For the next few weeks, neighbors stopped my father at the gate, asking about the author. The old lady 2 floors up bought 3 copies, one